all those who don't know, I'm Shelly Arnold. I'm the instructional coordinator for the Center for Empowering Teaching Excellence. My job at the university is to help provide resources for you to become the best teacher that you want to be, to meet your objectives and goals for higher education for you and your students. This is our Springboard to Action workshop. This is our third year holding it. And again, it's held during spring break. And the point of that is for you to be able to come in here and get something done. Not just learn something, but actually put in time and effort towards making a change to your teaching. JC Sheen over here was the one who came up with this event, and this has been a really popular one ever since. Yeah, I did that.
I'm obligated to be here every year.
No spring break plans for JC ever. Okay, this year, and it's a different topic every year. 2 years ago, we did on grading. Last year, we did changing up your syllabus. This year is all going to be about AI and faculty. So we brought in our amazing Ignite presenters to talk on those different topics. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the schedule after we hear from Jared Colton, who's going to talk about why we held this topic at this time and at this place. Go ahead, Jared.
Thank you. Well, welcome. I'm so excited to be here and be with this awesome group that I helped bring into this to give this workshop. My name is Jared Colton. I'm an associate professor of technical communication and rhetoric. I'm also the associate dean for undergraduate studies in the College of Humanities and Social Sciences. Yes, we are so glad you're here to think about how Gen AI or generative AI can and should impact your policies, your practices, and the future of how you teach and how your students learn. We have talks from great instructors and who also do research and who will explore the dynamic landscape of AI in education broadly and tackle real world insights that you'll be able to take and bring into classroom challenges. I chair an AI working group in my college, and I'm also currently conducting a study with a professor at the University of Utah on instructors' attitudes about Gen AI in the classroom and how instructors from a variety of disciplines approach Gen AI in their own courses. These attitudes range from excitement and fear. Some embrace it while others avoid it. Some discuss Gen AI with their students to explain why not it is not allowed in their class or is allowed in their class, clearly defining expectations so students are not confused. And some instructors just don't know what to do and act as if nothing has changed. Our aim today is to speak to a range of attitudes that you may have in the hopes that at minimum, you'll have more tools at your disposal to talk with students about Gen AI and possibly incorporate it into your classroom. And so before we turn, do I have the PowerPoint here? And the share screen. Before I turn the time over to our speakers, I want to provide some context and the reasons we thought this workshop was necessary. So why this event? Why now? Academic integrity discussions, student and faculty futures, possible AI fatigue, as well as new initiatives and resources we want to make you be aware of. First, academic integrity. The rapid emergence of Gen AI systems, as many of you probably are aware, has created new complications for defining and responding to academic integrity violations, academic dishonesty in general. In my role as Associate Dean for Undergraduate Studies, I receive academic integrity appeals. This means that the instructor has sanctioned a student for academic dishonesty, such as plagiarism, and the student has then appealed the academic integrity violation, asking for the sanction to be removed. All too often, the instructor has turned in the student as a result of simply using an AI checker, like Turnitin or Grammarly's AI writing detector, which can and have produced false positives. Of course, it's also a little ironic that an instructor who is against students using AI will use an application very similar or that actually incorporates AI to catch students using AI. And we need to continue to have discussions about how to productively communicate with students if we think they are being dishonest, rather than simply relying on a technology to tell us how to think. One of the reasons I'll be here is to help you think through any policies you might put into your syllabi related to what it means to sanction a student. And a sanction can be revising, asking a student to revise because you're accusing them of dishonesty. That is considered a sanction. If you do not turn them in, then you're actually preventing them from exercising a right to appeal the sanction you just gave them. So this can get complicated, and I'm happy to help discuss those types of challenges. We also need to talk about student and faculty futures. Two of my technical communication rhetoric students are currently interning for a tech startup company. They write blog posts for search engine optimization, and they conduct user testing for all the company's communications. Recently, they were told that the company hoped to move a majority of tasks to Gen AI, and that their job would shift to more editing tasks and writing prompts for the AI rather than them writing themselves. While initially worried that they would lose their purpose in the company and therefore their internship, the students responded by offering solutions and expertise about what it means for a company to significantly incorporate Gen AI in their communication. All of our students should be equipped to respond in a similar manner, that when AI is incorporated in their future workplace, and it is likely that that will happen if it hasn't already, they won't run and hide, but instead show up and be ethical and productive leaders. Our courses and policies should establish clear expectations with students and should make sense to our students' futures, including how they engage with Gen AI. The third one's AI fatigue. One of the reasons for this workshop is that AI fatigue is likely set in for many of us. It has for me on some ways. A year ago, it was all people talked about, and it was a bit exhausting probably, or at least for some of you. Maybe some of you were the people who just jumped on, because some faculty did respond and engaged with it, while others hoping to improve their knowledge and their skill sets, while others arguably hoped that if they closed their eyes, it would just go away. It's definitely not going away, as most of you probably know, and that's why you're here, which I'm so glad. In fact, we have a few new initiatives and resources that I want to just point you to realize how much is going on at USU. And this is just a few. USU has a newly approved and newly begun just in January, Data Science and Artificial Intelligence Center, the goal of which is to function as a kind of hub for all things data science and Gen AI. Specifically, it exists to connect faculty, students, and staff to internal and external stakeholders for research and teaching, including listing relevant programs. Speaking of programs, there are multiple courses and programs being designed around Gen AI, including 2 forthcoming certificates out of our college, an AI ethics certificate and another on AI and writing. We have multiple tools at our disposal, including a future Aggie AI Write, a soon-to-be available tool that teachers can use in Canvas to support student writing. There are also multiple online resources for AI in teaching and learning. If you check the USU events calendar, you'll regularly find AI in teaching workshops, like smaller ones, like an hour-long one. There was one on Friday, I believe. And finally, we have faculty expertise to draw from, including those speaking today. And Shelley will introduce them in more detail, but I just want to highlight the kind of expertise the faculty here have who are going to speak. Mike Otteson teaches about Gen AI challenges in his Ethics and Emerging Technologies course. Xiao Tan researches and teaches about how Gen AI affects language learning. Russ Wynn is one of the designers of the Canvas tool, Aggie AI Write, and he teaches an AI and writing course. Beth Boisery has published work on generative AI and teaching. And Chris Babbitts has published work on AI, including an article on ChatGPT discussions in the history of sexuality. We have a diverse range of expertises for you to draw from. These are just a sample of the expertise we have at USU. I'm really excited for you to hear from them and to learn with them. Thank you again for being with us here today. Shelley.
This is how it's going to work today. We're going to have our night presenters. They're going to have about 10 minutes apiece, and I'm going to be watching you. No, they're held 10 minutes apiece. There's not going to be questions during this period. Write down any questions you have, because right after the Ignite presenters are done, we're going to have roundtables where you get to sit with them and ask those questions and start thinking about AI policies, AI assignments, assessments that you want to start working on. And there's a whole hour dedicated to that, so you can move around from Mike to Russ to Beth to how that's going to work. And when it comes online, each presenter is going to work with the hybrid online with Logan in the other room. okay, for 10 minutes during that roundtable session. After that, we're going to have a small break and then we get to work. You're going to start working on whatever AI initiative you want to be putting into your classes. This is a workshop and we really mean that when we say that. Okay. So first up is we have Chris Babbitts. And Chris, which I know very well, is the Associate Director of Educational Initiatives and Innovation in the Center for Empowering Teaching Excellence. Today, Chris will discuss knowledge, skills, and competencies related to AI that various industry experts have expressed wanting from recent college graduates.
Good morning, everyone. As Shelley said, I am the Associate Director of Educational Initiatives and Innovation. How you can get that long title is if they give you the opportunity to just pick your own title. So I used to be the Director of Education and Professional Learning in our Division of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. In case if you're wondering, you can say diversity, equity, and inclusion 3 times in a row, and Spencer Cox does not appear behind you. So do not give in to 21st century McCarthyism is pretty much my lesson there. So they asked me to talk about what industry expects. And as you probably imagine, depending upon your industry expects a wide range of competencies with generative artificial intelligence. If you want to go work for Facebook or OpenAI, they might be asking you questions about general artificial intelligence. And can we create another Nelda that will do everything that Nelda can? And the answer is no. We are far, I mean, Nelda does so many wonderful things anyways, but we are far from general AI, despite what Sam Altman wants you to think. But I did find some data that I thought was important, including Handshake. Your students use Handshake quite a bit. Handshake is our job board that we have. And a lot of colleges use Handshake as well. And they teamed up with one of the human resource professional organizations to survey HR professionals and what they're looking for when they are looking at any CV. And this is, or resume. And this is a survey of 1,000 HR professionals. We're going to see a different survey that has about 1,000 business leaders and 1,000 students and what they want as well. And this is about as concrete as I could find, just because I could have plugged every Forbes or Harvard Business Review article into ChatGPT to get a summary, but I think it would have just largely said exactly what these findings are. So one is we can see the primacy of things that are consistent for our HR professionals. You can see a willingness to learn is still high up there on what they're actually looking for students. Strong work ethic and reliability, communication skills, teamwork, right? These are all the things that we have seen employers want from recent college grads for decades, for 2 or 3 decades. These soft skills, which we really need a better name, durable, transferable, durable skills have remained very high in demand, even with our AI revolution. And I wanted to point this out because we oftentimes talk about how AI changed everything. Oh, it still seems as though the humanity of our students and kind of the strengths that we have looked for traditionally still exist. It hasn't changed that. This is where it starts getting a little interesting, according to this one survey that you can find. We did have the slides for everybody. So if you click on the underline, it'll bring you to that survey. Data analysis, 57%. Obviously, by industry, by field, this is going to be different. We've been slowly seeing this one pick up over the past 2 decades, just generally. Information technology, 35%. You can probably guess everyone in information technology says that that's an important thing that they're looking for. Product management, right? I would say this goes with teamwork in a lot of ways as well. Currently, at the end of last year, this was taken right after students graduated en masse in May of 2024. Artificial intelligence registers around 8%. I do think that that's an important thing to keep in mind, that it's currently listed low. But I could see that a lot of people will think willingness to learn AI tools is going to be a really important thing, right? And so this 8%, though it's low as a distinct skill that's listed here, probably reflects the newness of it. And also employers and industry experts kind of not knowing entirely what's possible yet with it. But the willingness to learn AI tools, I think, is going to be giant for our students, especially. We have then a Cengage employability report. And this is the survey that does surveys both employers and students. And we can see that in this one, 62% of employers believe that candidates should have foundational knowledge of Gen I tools. But foundational knowledge, how to use it, how to approach using it. And they broke this down within certain categories. So 49% answered yes, they would want this for research. Whereas then 47% for writing support. 43% of employers for data analysis. And then 36 for brainstorming. So this is the opposite of what I tell my students. I tell them it's great for brainstorming. So we're seeing maybe a dissonance between what I think and what industry thinks. That's probably no shock if you ever met. I'm a professional historian. We're wrong about everything. So, but not as wrong as political scientists about elections. So no one from poli sci. And then 27, did someone boo me? Yeah. And then 27% for product development. And then this is what I think is interesting. This is the student side of things. So recent college graduates, BAs, 70% believe basic AI training should be integrated into courses, right? That is a large number, that it should be purposely integrated into our courses. 69% of graduates think they need more training on how to work alongside these tools. So that's also a high amount. They don't feel as though we have generally provided the skills and knowledge for that. And that is what I have for you. Shelley left. I always speak under my allotted amount because I always assume somebody else is going to speak over. So that's probably the most reliable set of data I could find that's not anecdotal. And so the links to each of those reports is there. You can kind of parse through that data a little bit more to see what might be useful to tell your students about, like, why I'm doing this, or what approaches we're taking. Or if I don't have AI in my class, it's because I still need to help you do teamwork and help you think about willingness to learn, because these are still skills that employers really, really value. So thank you.
All right. Next up is we have Beth. If you want to come pull up your slides, Beth. Okay. Beth is the director of composition for the English department. As the supervisor of all the English 1010, 2010, 2020 courses, she works with many faculty as they navigate writing instruction in the AI era. She is also co-editor of the interdisciplinary collection, Teaching in Generative AI, published by ET last year. Her talk focused on AI policies that encourage student teaching, dialogue, and critical thinking.
Thank you, Shelley. All right, thank you everyone for coming. Welcome. As Shelley said, I'm Beth Boisry, Director of Composition. And my talk, I'm going to try to combine what Jared and Chris said a little bit. For anyone who's been keeping up with SB 334, it's been a busy couple weeks, so this might be the worst slide I've ever created, so don't look at it. But what I wanted to think about, I'm talking a lot about policies and ways to think about how to design your AI policies and communicate those with students. And there's a couple things that frame my talk. One, there's an article within Rhetoric and Composition written by Williams, named Phenomenology of Error. And what he does in his article is, and it's an older article, but he says that that if faculty are approaching students with the idea that they are deficient in some way, okay, then they will find that. He's specifically talking about things like grammar. At the end of his published article, he reveals that he has made 57 or something grammatical errors, but because we are not reading for that, they don't affect communication, we don't notice them, etc. Whereas with students, if we're looking for, in the case of AI, things like cheating, we will find it whether or not it exists. I'm not saying that we don't read our students' work carefully and that we don't read it in order to help them become more proficient in whatever our area of expertise is. But I do think in terms of ethics, how we think about framing the policy, I'm talking more about us as faculty, how we think about ethics rather than the ethics of the students in terms of whether they cheat or not cheat. So whenever I work with faculty, I encourage us to think about how do we start framing the way that we have conversations about AI in the classroom so that it's learning centered and dialogue centered. Because as Chris just showed us, industry and the places where our students are going, they want students to be thinking critically about AI. And so, in my opinion, a firm like "Don't cheat, I will fail you completely," and I will expect that you will be cheating if you happen to write well, which is what we're actually teaching you how to do, is write well. That puts us as faculty in a place where I think learning gets less centered, and I'm hoping that our policies can help center student learning and our commitments to dialogue. So I'm going to go past this slide because it's terrible. Sorry, but I think it's also important because it's important for us to be able to have some time in any of our classes, whether it's a large class or smaller classes, for students to be thinking critically about how AI works or doesn't work within your classroom. I think Chris made a really good point in that saying we might not use AI in this classroom at all because we are emphasizing teamwork or some of the other things. I'm not here to say that you have to include AI or not. That's up to you and your discipline and your course outcomes. But students are meeting AI everywhere. So even when I did a very quick Google search on AI policies, our AI comes up first. Okay, so ignoring it in the classroom completely, I don't think is effective. This is the kind of activity that I would encourage faculty to do. So my talk, I'm advocating that we incorporate policies with activities in the classroom or with assessments in the classroom. Mike is going to talk soon about assessments. But for example, having AI, like having students critically analyze at the beginning of a course, what does AI have to say about whatever? How does that help you? How might they need to be thinking critically about that as we transfer our skills from one discipline into the community or into their professional context? And even if you're teaching a large course, students can still like pair up next to each other and ask critical questions. So here's a sample AI policy from my English 2020 professional communication class. And I'm happy to talk more about it when we talk about it in small groups. This is also very similar to the policy that we provide to all of the graduate instructors who are teaching English 1010 and 2010. But I've broken it down where I do give some framing. So where we talk to students how ChatGPT, other gen ed or generative AI programs can provide innovation and insight into how we interact with writing and research and information. It can be used both ethically and successfully in educational systems, but it has to be done so purposefully. Because my goal as a teacher is also to make sure that you're learning the outcomes. It makes a lot of sense in our students' professional communication class where I'm like, I want to make sure that you're not replacing yourself. Like, so if you're only using AI to do all of your thinking and all of your learning, you are essentially replacing yourself in your profession. Okay. And that is not and that makes sense to students. They don't want to replace themselves. And I was like, so in my class, I do have some places where I need us to focus on writing and I need to know what your writing is so that I can help you. But we're also going to be working on how do we use AI to augment that, because I can't pretend that AI will never be used to help them with their writing. So we do a lot of work in the class, helping them think about when might they use AI purposefully and usefully in the course. I say in my AI policy guidelines, I have them talk about, like, I'm going to be very clear with each assignment when and in what ways you can and should use AI to help you meet the course outcomes. Sometimes I think it's the sample policy, whether the sample policy is never use it at all or use it in these situations or use it however you want. There's some courses where it's like, you can't cheat at all with AI, like use AI however you want. I think one of the challenges is that because we're at a university where we each have our own AI policy, then that means that students forget when they move from context to context. And that's not bad, because they're going to have to negotiate that shift every single time they go to a job. Like, for example, I might be able in my current position to use AI to help craft something. But I might not use it to like write my promotion materials completely, you know, like I need to be able to say that I am doing these things. So I need to make decisions, my own job, about when to use AI and when to not. If I'm working in something like nursing or something that has classified information, the way you use AI changes depending on the context. So again, we go back to our course learning outcomes of rhetoric, really thinking about the rhetorical context, and helping them navigate that, because I think that's one of the concepts that they're going to have to continue navigating even after they're done writing the particular paper. I do point to the student code because, as Jared was saying, there are times when AI is overused. But really we frame it with, I'm not expecting you to use this to cheat. I want us to use it in a way that's helpful. And we talk a lot about how this particular policy doesn't transfer. So in our first project, so I found in Canvas, I'm going to thank Neil, there's a little cute robot that I use to have the icon in my assignments. So I have an AI use section in each of my assignments. And for the first project, I asked them not to use AI to brainstorm or research. Thank you. Not because it's not helpful, but because I need to assess where they are to begin with. And then for the second project, I asked that they use the research databases, et cetera. And then we're going back and looking at how AI compares with that so that they're doing some of their own work first. I have a chapter in the edited collection on a professional communication assignment where students they're doing this assignment right now. They're using AI for their primary research. So like one group is putting in fake prompts into a whole bunch of different kinds of like ChatGPT and different kinds of AIs. And they're like, this one is most effective if you want sources. This one is most effective for these sorts of things. So they're coming up with their own recommendations. And then in the last project, there's a lot of like, here's how you can use it and here's how I want you to think about not using it. For example, I don't want you to use it for your self-assessment. So the larger policy is then supplemented each time within each project that connects to the learning outcomes. I also, when thinking about talking to students about AI misuse, just questions that you can ask yourself, like, how do I set up my class to encourage dialogue and critical thinking? What additional policies do I have that would encourage or discourage students to talk with me if they're misusing AI? So if all of your other policies are like, there's no extensions, there's no whatever, it's really tight, then students might be more inclined to use AI if they're worried about getting penalized other way. And then, am I reading their work through a lens of suspicion or learning? But then also, and this goes back to what Jared was saying too, who can I talk to help me gain some perspective on the issue if I'm concerned about AI misuse? As individual teachers, it can be really emotionally frustrating if we're suspecting AI. In my role, I talk to other teachers. So talking to other teachers can be helpful. Those are essentially the kinds of questions that I have to help you think about AI. Thank you.
Next up We have Michael. Addison, you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Pull up your presentation, should be right there.
Fantastic.
And Michael is assistant professor at USU. He has been at USU in various capacities since 2020. He received his PhD from the University of Kansas in 2020, and he specializes in ancient philosophy and ethics. And we'll discuss AI-driven assignments in a course, such as ethics and emerging technologies.
Jared generously introduced us as experts. I certainly don't feel like one. I've just been kind of dinking around with crap and seeing what happens. I feel like it's like we're at the beginning of something. It wasn't clear when they first invented gunpowder that, you could make machine guns with it. So we'll see where all this goes. But I'll just tell you my first sort of experiments with this kind of stuff. Well, when the sort of AI first hit the scene, when ChatGPT 3.5 was released for general consumption, I was concerned about this in terms of like whether or not any of my old assignments would sufficiently sort of help students actually like master the skills that we think are important in our classes, learn the material. And so I wanted to design assignments where I didn't have to worry a lot about sort of policing the use of AI, either because it leaned into the use of AI or just were the sort of thing that would have been very hard or perhaps impossible to use AI on. So some of the things that I've worked on are oral exams, in-class presentations, randomly calling on students for comments about course material during class, video presentations with the use of AI, and AI generated papers. And so I'm going to first start with the video audio presentations that I required of my students. So there's a few elements to sort of the prompts that I designed for ChatGPT, and two of the really important ones are the fact that there's a recursive element to these assignments, and the student has to evaluate multiple outputs from the generative AI system. So my first prompt when I sort of put it out there basically said, okay, here's a standard essay prompt that I would have given students previously about, to write a paper on, right? Is something like, explain what the greatest happiness principle is in Mill and why he thinks it's a sound basis for ethics. And I said, okay, instead of writing a paper on that, take that sentence and feed it to ChatGPT and ask it to give you an answer. So they have to do my first attempt on this, they had to do this once, and then they had to feed that response back into ChatGPT and say, is this a good response? What are some of the problems with it? Is it deficient in any sort of way? And then I said, in the video presentation, you have to explain whether or not you thought the first initial attempt was better or whether or not the critique was fair. And then further, even if you think one was better than the other, was either of them particularly good? Can you find evidence in the text from class discussion to sort of support your judgment in this case? So that was sort of the first assignment I designed. It included it in both lower and upper division courses. Here are some of the things that I found when I gave this assignment to my students. The first thing I found was that the averages on these assignments were very similar to the averages my students scored on essays. I took that to be some kind of evidence that it wasn't like super easy for them just to breeze through it with AI, right? It was, some students did amazing on it, some did not do very well on it, and some, did well in some way, struggled in others, right? Which is the sort of thing that we often, I think, find when we give traditional writing assignments. I think that's evidence that it required critical engagement with the course material in order to do well on the assignment. If you had not done any of the readings, if you hadn't come to class discussion, you generally did poorly on this assignment. If you had, made a good faith effort to do those things, I think people did at least decent. I incorporated the video, so I took a lot of this stuff from other philosophers who were kind of putting out material. about how to handle, artificial, the use of chat GPT in classes. Um, like Professor Staffel at the University of Colorado had a nice video on this. And I liked the suggestion also that I think it's harder to have chat GPT make a video presentation for you that you then have to give than it is to have it write like an essay for you. It's harder to do that. It's not foolproof, but I think it raises the bar such that it would take so much work to generate an effective, perfect script for a video presentation that I think it's a lot easier for students just to engage in the assignment in a good faith manner. So those were some of the things I liked about the sort of outcomes. And I do think it tested for a lot of the same things that essays test for, giving a video presentation on a topic. Now, I will say that some of this first attempt, sometimes it's kind of clunky to get the recursion right. It was just a little bit of awkward. Students didn't always understand exactly how to do it and what I was asking for, which means in part I probably wasn't explaining it very well. I also do think writing is valuable. It's a way of thinking, and video presentations and oral presentations of any kind, I think it gets at a lot of the same skills that writing does, but not entirely. And I was still wanted to figure out how to incorporate that into my classes. So I wanted to think about that more. And so with my second, there's a second attempt at the sort of video presentation that I did. And then I did some other things to try and bring writing back into my classes. On the second attempt with the video presentation, I just said from the outset, feed ChatGPT the prompt, have it generate 2 distinct responses to the prompt that are contradictory in some way, that disagree with each other. And then you have to explain which one is better based on the text and the class discussions, especially including making part of what's also effective, I think, on these sorts of things is ChatGPT doesn't have access to your class lectures. They have to be in class to know what was discussed in class. So requiring them to cite that in the video presentations is another thing that I've added to these assignments. There's still an element of saying you can't have the AI think for you on some level. I don't think the AI, by the way, is particularly good at evaluating its own output. Which is one of the reasons I think this works, because of course you can just ask the AI, well, which of these responses is better? It's not particularly substantial, the answers it gives you when I've tried to do this myself. So you have to, know a little, again, you had to have done the readings, you had to have been in class, to succeed here. And again, I think the bell curve is not dissimilar. Again, it's not like everyone is just knocking this out of the park. It's like super easy, right? And it's challenging in some ways such that it's like, oh, okay, you did some things well, here's some other things to work on, which is I think generally where we want to be with our students, right? That's the sort of assignments we want to give them. I also experimented with entirely AI generated essays in my upper division courses. And so the requirements I said is I would give, this was an option that they could use, but I said, amongst many options that I have for sort of longer projects, but I said this has all the same requirements as the standard essay prompt, but you have to prove to me that this is 100% AI generated. Give me the screenshots of your conversation, but that's the final product has to be something that was entirely spit out by ChatGPT or an analogous system. I also said that as a requirement, insofar as the floor was easier to achieve with the use of AI, I said unless the paper is an A, it's going to get a 70%. So some students took this route. Some students tried to take this route. Some of the best students we have in our program and just insisted they just could not get this thing to write an A-level paper in an upper division class. That in and of itself, I think, was useful. Some students did try to do this, and I found the quality of the papers to be rather poor. I just don't know that the AI is super good at writing extended essays at this point. And again, I wasn't forcing them to do this. So if anything, maybe the lesson from giving this as an option for students is that it doesn't work that well, and maybe that's a valuable lesson in its own right. I have yet to see an A-level paper generated from this option. But it does seem to change perceptions of AI, so I'll probably keep it as an option in my courses. On the presumption, if someone does get in it, my strong suspicion is if someone eventually generates an A-level paper in an upper division class, they probably knew a lot about the material and were very good at sort of prompting that in their they had to prompt it effectively, much like a coder, has to know what the end goal is in order to get the output you want. Last thing I'll talk about briefly is that I actually ended up pairing a take-home midterm with a final oral exam. So in this case, they could write a standard essay, and that reincorporates writing in the way that I wanted to. But the final for my class was they had to sign up for an oral exam. And so they had to come. So, in the middle of the semester, they wrote a paper. The final was me sort of talking to them about the paper they wrote and any topics later in the semester that were relevant, or, material that was relevant to the topic they picked. This is, again, it's very hard to use AI in real time in an oral exam. This is a way of sort of checking to see if the student really understood the material, not dissimilar to masters and dissertation defenses. So that's what I have for you. That's what I've experimented in with. Thank you so much.
Next up, that hand is Assistant Professor of English. Her research focuses on students' writing process and practices with generative AI and teaching innovation in the age of Gen AI. In her talk, she will guide us to think through 3 key questions related to assessments of students' AI-assisted work.
So I know that many of you, especially if you're an instructor of writing intensive courses, when you see a highly suspicious work that sounds too much machine-like, you may feel a different range of emotions, right? You may feel angry, you may feel disappointed, confused, etc. I feel that the same way. But I want to start my talk with a short story. So I've been conducting a longitudinal study on students' academic socialization during their first year of program. My participants are all international students who speak English as their second language. And one of my participants who's enrolled in a master's degree in another university, the final project of one of her courses last semester is a film analysis paper. So basically, as a group, they had to use a framework discussed in class and analyze a film of their choice. So that assignment was very hard for her because she had a hard time understanding the theories and using them for analysis. So she used ChatGPT to help her with that assignment in a way that she considered to be ethical, such as brainstorming, understanding the frameworks, choosing the film, etc. So she was quite happy at the end of last semester. She was quite happy with her assignment. And she said that ChatGPT helped her a lot to learn to complete this assignment, but also to learn. And this at the beginning of this semester, I checked with her again, and she said she only received a B for that assignment, and she was not happy. So I asked her why your assignment, your final paper, only received a B, and she said she doesn't know because the instructor didn't comment on the paper. And as a team, they all wrote emails to the instructor asking them to justify the B, and never received any responses. So we simply, like as a researcher, I simply don't know why the instructor gave the student a B for their assignment, probably because the final work sounds too machine-like, could be, but we simply don't know. But from the student perspective, what exactly did she learn from that assignment. She thought she did a good job fulfilling all the requirements, but she simply didn't know what she can improve on this assignment. So my talk today is guided by 3 questions. I don't have all the answers to those questions, but I think those are important questions that we should start asking ourselves now. So the first question is, why do you think students use AI in their writing? So this study conducted by Wang et al. In 2024, they surveyed over 300 students asking their motivations of using AI and their perceptions and experiences. And they found that the students may started using AI because of curiosity, or sometimes because they were taught to use it in class, but students continued to use AI after seeing the potential benefits. So in other words, students' practices are sustained because they see the benefits and because they see that AI can help them learning. The second question is, what is the role of teaching? What is the role of writing in our teaching? So I'm a writing teacher, and the ability to write is our teaching goal. But I know that for many of you, you're assigning writing as a way for students to think about the course material. And oftentimes we assume that writing leads to thinking, leads to learning. But that assumption, the assumption of using writing as a default assignment type, needs to be challenged, especially in the age of AI. So a study done by Poland and Katie Riley in 2004, that's like way before the age of AI, found that students' essay showed an inverse relationship between quality and critical thinking. So in other words, a highly scored paper doesn't necessarily show or indicate that students demonstrate critical thinking in writing this paper. And this is even more so in the age of AI. So we need to think about the different ways of assessing students' learning. And I think that aligns nicely with what Michael just talked about. How can we know that students are critically thinking and critically engaging with our course materials? What are some of the multimodal assignments that we can design to help students demonstrate their learning? The last question is, how do we respond to students' AI-assisted work? So here are some of the principles that I find helpful. The first one is to acknowledge your assumption about using AI. And I think Beth in her talk touched upon that in one of her slides. So what assumptions do we have about using AI in writing? So in a study that we did last year, it's a quasi-experimental study. So we asked a group of writing teachers to evaluate the same essay under different conditions. So a group of them were told that this essay was written by the student independently, and another group was told that the student used ChatGPT in writing this essay. But essentially, they were grading the exact same essay. The group of teacher who graded the essay under the AI condition scored it significantly lower in almost every category. So what does that say about our assumptions about AI? So in our follow-up interviews, some teachers very honestly acknowledged their bias against using AI. So they said, well, my bias or my perception of AI might factor into that. But I think most of the times we don't really talk about our assumptions about AI, and we don't talk about that with our students either. So I think there needs to be a more open channel of communication between the teacher and student. So the second principle is that we need conversation between the teacher and students, focusing on the process of learning and not just the end product. Again, this ties back to my second question: how do we know that our students are learning? What are some of the ways that we can or assignments or activities or assessment practices that we can develop to understand students' learning? And how do we allow students to demonstrate their learning? And the last principle is that is to manage our own emotional responses. And again, I think Beth mentioned a really good point of talking to other instructors about your experiences, practices, or maybe your emotional reactions to students' work. And I think that could be really tremendously helpful. Yeah, so that's there's a list of references, and I look forward to talking to you in the Q&A session.
Thank you, Zhao. Now we got Russ Wynn, our final one. I never run early. So this is kind of nice. Right, JC? We never run early. Russ Wynn is a lecturer for the Department of English at Utah State University. He teaches general education courses as well as AI and writing, and spearhead the Department of English collaboration with the Center for Instructional Design on the creation of Aggie AI. Right. An in-house app designed to provide feedback and suggestions on student writing. Go ahead, Russ.
Good morning, folks. My name is Russ. I want to talk to you about time management and workflows. I will be giving a demonstration to go along with that. So just to sort of echo what's been said and to preface the stuff that I want to talk about, and maybe to reframe it a little bit, I think it's important to think about this the way that our current governmental policy does as well. And this does echo some of the things that Beth and Jared both said. It's important to, like, US copyright delineates a difference between AI generated content and AI assisted content. And the idea being is that if you have something like ChatGPT create a text, like write something for you, it is under copyright protection and you own it in a sense as soon as you go in and edit it and fix it. As soon as there is quote unquote an element of human interaction, that's what the copyright law says, then you can take ownership over it. That plays a really important role in things like the plagiarism up here and the ways that we start to think about this. But one really important way that you can think about your use of AI on your end is how important to you is the human element versus the generated element, right? How much assistance do you need with this? So there's not one answer for that, but I think that you'll find one answer for that. And that's maybe the way that I want to look at this stuff. So obviously, the easy way to use generated stuff would be to automate repetitive tasks, to streamline grading of gated, like gate kept information, maybe quizzes and things like that, to a degree supporting research, although there's some sticky things to navigate there. And then most importantly, in my mind, is to improve student engagement. So those are the things that we're going to look at as far as administrative tasks are concerned. The tools in question, I can give you examples, but there are so many varied tools because there's so much competition and it also changes so quickly. Most of the conversations that we had surrounding AI, began around 2003, and we all sort of panicked and decided that we needed an opinion on this, and that opinion was formed then. But even as recently as December, the leaps in AI technology and the changes that have been made are so fundamental that this stuff is changing even now. And a lot of our opinions haven't really evolved, right? So with that in mind, AI-powered a lot of us are already using those. Drafting assistants, even Grammarly can draft things like that. You have to consider, when would a boilerplate email be appropriate? Am I sending out an email to a large group about an event? In that kind of an instance, maybe a human element can be de-emphasized, but it does depend on the event, right? Are you comfortable sending out fully drafted emails from AI to students? I'm not. I think that a human element is really valuable there because we want to reinforce that human interaction. That said, I see no problem, especially in difficult emails where a student comes to you with a complex problem in a draft and then going through, and then usually I end up rewriting the whole thing, but it's a nice starting point, right? And then you can also think about syllabi and rubrics and course outlines. Syllabi are largely informational up to a point. The same thing with rubrics, and so maybe there's a little bit more sort of wiggle room there. As far as that kind of thing might be concerned, let me show you what that might look like the way that I do it. A lot of people do this differently, but this is just one option. Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
I'm going to be teaching a literature class in a couple weeks, and I'm going to work on a lesson plan. Can you help me with that today?
Absolutely. What kind of literature are you focusing on? And is there a specific theme or time period you want to cover?
Well, first of all, can you see through my cell phone camera right now? What can you see?
Yeah, I can see your desk with a few books stacked up, a microphone, and a laptop or tablet propped up. There's also some chairs around the room. Are you focusing on anything specific for your lesson plan?
So specifically the books in the stack there. Can you see the Cormac McCarthy book there? What is that?
Yeah, I can see it. The title looks like Blood Meridian. Are you planning to use it for a specific theme or discussion topic?
I think so. I'd like to teach a class that uses is a close reading of certain parts of the Cormac McCarthy book. What areas in the book could I focus on? And give me some ideas on some themes that I might explore. Oh, it died. You can see where that goes though, right? It's a very interactive thing now. I can do that in my car. I can rehearse this lecture on the way to this event. It will remember those things. I can then upload files that I have on my own, that desktop of lecture notes. I can have it go back through and produce a PowerPoint for this kind of thing. And then I can go in and edit that. So it really is a powerful way to begin an engagement, right? A lot of students are doing some of this already. And so if you're mindful of that, then you can ask yourself how you can facilitate it. There are still professors here, even though this has been a problem for pedagogically for 20 plus years, you know, with the advent of the algorithm, there are still professors that will get up in front of a class and think that a lecture, a 15-minute lecture or an hour-and-a-half lecture, and the class taking really good notes is a sufficient learning model. Students push back against that, obviously, but a lot of them will go into Google Docs or something similar, and they'll take notes together. It becomes them versus the professor. But I know multiple professors at this university that will get a hold of that Google Doc, paste it into something like ChatGPT, ask it to look for weaknesses in the lecture or points of emphasis in the lecture that students seem to have thought went really well, and then give them a summary of that so that they can go back and cover points that they might have missed. They can further refine their lectures with suggestions based on the AI, and then they can make assessments based on student understanding of material because they have immediate access to student understanding the material. You can set that kind of a process up in a class. Tell the students, hey, we're all going to take a collaborative Google Doc notes. I need groups of 6 or 7. I want you to take these, and then they'll all copy paste them into ChatGPT. Tell them if they don't understand something you said to ask a question in the notes, things like that. Have it all collated in some kind of an AI, have it produce something, and then wrap up the lecture with the things that they don't understand. Or you could devote a class period to that kind of thing as well. You'll also need to realize that students will take texts off of Canvas, load them up into ChatGPT fully, have it do summaries, then they'll take your quizzes that you have on Canvas. They'll tell the AI to use them as models, and they'll just take quizzes on a chapter until they stop failing those quizzes without even having read the chapter. That's something that one could argue is a fairly iterative experience. It's a fairly dialogic experience that maybe mimics critical thinking in healthy ways. So what if that's advocated in class? What if you modeled how to take a quiz with AI in an appropriate way? They saw you engaging with the content in that way. That's a really good starting point, and that takes you know, it's not so much about you gatekeeping information and disseminating it, so much as everybody sort of absorbing the information and approaching it in a practical way. Another thing might be learning plans. You can take a spreadsheet, an Excel sheet out of Canvas with all the student scores on quizzes. And then instead of you combing through it manually, you do it closer to the end of the semester or midterms or something. You can have it look for low scores for specific students on specific things and have it help you come up with learning plans for individual students if that's something that can meet your class's needs, right? Based on the metrics and the numbers that you're already generating for that course, you and your TAs or just you can start to personalize the learning for the class or for individual students that aren't doing well. A lot of students who run into classes where they just don't understand the material, the first thing they'll do is blame the professor for presenting it poorly, and then they'll go to ChatGPT, whether that's true or not. They'll go to ChatGPT and they'll have ChatGPT, they'll have it function as a tutor, right? So modeling an appropriate way to do that in your own classes can be valuable as well. As far as research might be concerned, this is kind of a sticky area because we want to make sure that that data is protected. Abstracts, grant proposal, maybe using AI assistance in literature reviews. Those are all appropriate things that I've seen researchers do. But above that, I would say that using tools to search and collate data is also going to be pretty valuable if you're comfortable giving that tool access to the data. Right now, the frontiers of AI have de-emphasized, they've kind of backed off of the writing, and they're very much devoted to coding architecture and research architecture. So OpenAI put out a thing called Deep Research, and supposedly it's supposed to be able to produce grad level, B-ish grad level papers on its own, depending on the research that the researcher gives it access to. So there's been a lot of recent work in that area, as opposed to just writing or just things like that. Student engagement, chatbots are really seen as lacking a human element in a lot of cases, though they're often used as an introductory thing for like websites that want to get somebody involved in something. So they might see AI chatbots on university websites when they first go to find maybe an advisor or something like that. And I know that a lot of in-house development, not just at this university, but a lot of others, is really pushing towards that kind of approach. Any ways that personalized learning can become part of this can be really valuable. When AI was still, you know, they were spending millions of dollars on training these things. So GPT 3.5 cost $1 million to train, and it took 20 years of internet data to train it. Then once they got up to 4.0, they took 2 or 3 years. Then after that, they realized that they'd used all the data. So they used their AI to make an internet's worth of data to train on. So they made their own full internet's worth of data and they used that to train on. That's not great. That's called synthetic data. It's like, you know, re-eating your own lunch. I don't know, but that wasn't really lost on developers. And so what they did is they turned to the ways that academics and intellectuals are using AI. The key, we have all found that the key to using AI well is a dialogic back and forth process. You know, give it a prompt and don't accept what it pukes out. Go back in and you go back and forth until you're happy with the results or you've improved. AI now has those dialogues with itself. So it's actually starting to take cues from us. It's a little disconcerting, but it does make things run a lot more smoothly on the back end of things. But it's also really good at personalized learning now. It can remember what students' needs might be, things like that. Also, reading apps can be really valuable. A lot of us are still big proponents in the idea that reading is a important skill to develop, and student literacy rates are often seen as questionable depending on where you are and what classes you're teaching. Reading apps that watch students read with algorithms and then assign starter grades, and then encourage students to like engage in dialogue surrounding the text in like a group chat setting, things like hypothesis and perusal. Those are really valuable tools for those of us who don't want to give up on readings in that sense. So you might want to consider some of those as well. And ETE, City, there's workshops on that kind of thing all the time. A lot of us are happy to walk people through that as well. I think that's it. I think that just to restate, considering at what points the human elements are at their most important is the big takeaway from this, especially not just mine, but I think other people's presentations as well. So there's so many apps out there that you kind of have to navigate this your own way in that sense, but having a feel for that and understanding that can be really valuable. Thank you.